This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides. So head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven. And today I'm joined by a very old friend of mine, Matthew Rice, who is the most wonderful draftsman, illustrator, painter, particularly of buildings and gardens. I mean, I guess that's what he's really concentrating on at the moment. And I have lots of his paintings in our house. I've got a wonderful one I'm looking at now of pumpkins. Anyway, welcome, Matthew. It's lovely to have you on the podcast.
Well, very nice to have me. Thank you very much.
And Matthew has written many books, but he's got one out this summer called How to Look, Draw and Paint. And Adam and I were looking at it, and it really made us want to do a sort of step-by-step. And that's what's very good. Matthew's a really brilliant teacher, and it really does show you, as somebody, if you're interested in nature and gardens, as I am, how gradually you can learn to paint them and engage with them in a different way. And so that's why I thought it'd be wonderful to have him on the podcast, because I think almost like embroidery, which is something else that I've been doing of garden plants. I've got some wonderful tulips, isn't it tulips at the moment. Painting is another thing that helps us engage with our gardens, I think. Do you agree, Matthew?
Well, I think that looking is really good, and painting is basically a kind of recorded looking. And so if you are someone who loves your garden and loves plants and flowers, then actually concentrating and looking at them is a way of learning more about them. And also, you spend longer if you're drawing. So if you look at something in the garden, you say, isn't that rose utterly lovely? And then you say to Sarah, do you love that rose? And she says, yes, I love that rose. So do I. And then you've looked at it for all of about 12 seconds.
Yes.
But if you sit and look at drawing that rose, then you're spending half an hour with the thing. And so you're engaged in a completely different way. It's not more of a relationship at that point. And so I think you learn to understand the thing.
Yeah. Do you know, that reminds me of reading some of Vita Sackville-West's writing. And she used to do the same thing, but not painting it, but she would have it on her desk. So I remember her writing about things like snake's-head fritillaries, iris reticulatas, really delicate auriculas, zinnias. And because she had them right next to her as she was writing at her desk, and I think she spent 8-10 hours at her desk normally, it was her kind of haven. Exactly as you say, she formed this really strong relationship with the thing. And I remember as a girl, my dad gave me this rule of 1 in 100, which maybe we'll come on to, which is if there are 100 wildflowers, it's okay to pick one, because just as you say, you then form a relationship with that because it sits by your bed as a school girl or schoolboy or whatever through the week. And by the end of the week, when it's dead, you've kind of fallen in love with it and you care about it.
Yeah, I read the Vita thing too, and I think that having something in front of you on your desk anyway is nice to contemplate and fix on. But I think that in a way what this book deals with is this idea of observational drawing versus iconography. So if you are making icons, you are dealing with an idealized symbolic treatment of a subject. So you know that, I don't know, Virgin has a lily in her hand and a goldfinch because they mean this and they mean that. Or the sun is a disc with a smiling face in it and rays going out of it. And those are iconographic treatments of subjects. But when you observe, when you're doing observational drawing, you're looking for the specific and you're understanding often something for the first time. And I was very struck a few years ago drawing a potato plant. But I have grown, like you, many, many thousands of potatoes and eaten, sadly, many thousands of potatoes in my life. But I think until I sat and drew that plant, I hadn't realized what an extraordinarily defined square structure the stalks have, and ribbed and square. And it made me look at that. And I thought, how funny. I literally have looked at potato plants. I've earthed them up, I've planted them, I've pulled them out, I've tossed them onto the side of the bed. I've done all of those things for decades, and I've never really bothered to look at those stalks.
Yeah. So maybe we could talk about favorite things for you. Maybe you could give us 2 or 3 things that you really look forward to them coming out in the garden and you think, fabulous. I'm going to have a lovely evening this evening painting that.
Well, I mean, it does change, doesn't it? Because one's pathetically liberty-gibbet heart does change over the years. So I am very slightly obsessed with columbines at the moment, with Aquilucha, with their great long tails. I bought some seeds in California about 3 years ago, and their various babies are growing in the gravel. And I find that extraordinary sort of selection that you get of those, and they leave them too long and they go back to whatever it's called, Nora Barlow. But, the business of having them with these very, very peculiar shape.
Yeah.
And they're very nice. I mean, things that are articulated are easy to draw. Things that are simple. So the hardest thing to draw is an arum lily.
Yeah,
because
of course.
It's got nothing to... When you're teaching lots of people, you say, pick anything you like. And they come back with an arum lily out of the garden because they think this is easy.
Yes.
But of course, it's so unarticulated.
Yeah, blank.
That you can't... There's nothing to get your maulers on with it. It's very hard to grip it. Whereas if you deal with a foxglove or a lupin or something, then it's like a sort of tower block. It's got loads of angles and dark and shade and light falling on it and all sorts of helpful rungs on the ladder to help you draw it.
That's such a good tip, actually.
Yeah, but I think the things that one... And then at the moment, so I look forward to... Of course, like everybody else, I look forward to the first of everything because I'm... appallingly competitive. You probably never noticed, but I always want to have sweet peas in March and the polytunnel, all that kind of thing. People say, "My God, you've got sweet peas!" And I feel hooray. I mean, sweet peas are famously a little bit difficult to draw because if you draw them carefully, they look really sinister and horrible. And I think that, which does take me onto this whole thing about botanical drawing, because I think that there is a sort of odd discipline, rather like serious contemporary music. Quite often it misses the point of a flower, and you end up with every knobble and sort of crinkle and crankle on a plant, and its awful wiggly root. Yes. And it may be interesting, but it's quite often not how we see or feel the plant.
Yes.
So you have to start off by thinking, how do we see a courgette? How do we see a tomato? Because it may not be the same as a very careful scientific look at the thing.
Yeah, so it's as much about the atmosphere as the look. So what you're saying is the look is incredibly important and looking at it, but then the atmosphere around that plant and around your feelings of the plant. I mean, one of the things that I liked in the book was you talking about how it can be a form of escapism in lots of ways. One is it gives you peace, but also you can make the sort of absolute ideal version, if you want to, without it being chocolate boxy and sentimental. You can actually enhance it more than you could with a photograph, for instance.
Yes, I mean, I think that drawing is a method of communicating that irons out the creases or allows you to control. So you can take out the telegraph wires in front of the building, you can move the cars. Yes. There are so many things that drawing gets you out of, problems it gets you out of. But yes, it also is contemplative. It's quite hard to draw well. I know I'm a terrible chatterer, but you draw less well if you are chattering.
Yes.
You do need to focus and put your head down and really think about the thing. And that does clear out all the shopping lists, the window cleaner and the gas bill are all gone when you're thinking about the peony.
Yeah. And that's why you tend to do it either very early in the morning or even more quite late in the evening, because the sort of work of the day is done and sort of people have gone away, so you can concentrate.
Yes. I think that early morning is just, you and I are the same. We like to get up early and get at things. But in the evening, I am not a great watcher of telly. And so I do work in the evening. My parents both work in the evening. My father very late. And I find that, again, it's a really quiet time.
Yeah.
There's less going on. The window cleaner never turns up at 10 at night.
Yeah. Emails don't come in, etc., etc.
The man is back in his home in Porlock and is not coming in.
Yeah. Good. I think that sounds absolutely right. And so sort of moving on to the kind of peace side of it, which we've skirted around. I mean, I definitely get it from propagating, and I know quite a few people who know me think it's utterly bizarre that, as quite like you, quite a restless and hyperactive person, I actually adore pricking out, sowing seeds, pricking out, and taking cuttings and potting them on. I love doing very concentrated, quite mundane, repetitive things. And what you're saying is this is a more challenging form of that, in a way.
Yes, but I mean, it is, I think people forget the fact there's a lot of grunt in drawing.
Yeah.
There really is. A lot of what you're doing is repetitive. A lot of what you're doing is not changing the world, really. You're just sitting quietly, working your way around the petals or a rose or whatever. It's quite grunted quite often. I mean, I also, probably given a choice, I'd be pricking out basil seeds every day of my life. Makes me completely happy. I love the feeling of picking each one up, and I like the look of a tray of 36 or 48 or whatever you get in those nice plug trays at the end. I feel not the same. But when you're drawing, I think probably your mind is more engaged in what you're doing, whereas when you're putting out the little seedlings, your mind can go off on a little arabesque or two while you're doing it. It's more of a kind of mandala thing where you're chanting away and thinking of something different. Whereas when you're drawing, I think you probably are doing something a bit different. And I think you are just channeling all your attention and energy into one job.
And I also like the way you write in the book about how it's not easy. And I think that's really good to sort of grasp that straight away. And what you say is that, you know, there's a big fashion at the moment, and has been for the last 5 or 6 years, I think, for colouring books, and quite often garden-based colouring books or floral patterns, sort of William Morris type designs, where it's obviously one-dimensional. And colouring in is an incredibly restful, contemplative, peaceful thing. And drawing is, you sort of describe it as much more demanding, but because of that, really one step better, because you are the creator of this thing. It's coming out of you, and it's a learning process. Whereas, of course, there is learning with colouring in books, but not in the same way. It doesn't put the same demand on you.
No, but I think it does actually do some of the same things.
Yeah.
And it widens the net in that more people can do it. And it's something that is basically easier. But there is also a lot of scope when you're colouring into to make decisions. I mean, it's all making decisions, isn't it? Shall I do this? Shall I do that? And particularly if your colouring in isn't sort of filling in the boxes, numbered boxes, but you literally are working out what to do next. And we all know lots of very clever and sort of intelligent folk who love doing colouring in. So I think it's an interesting thing. And I suppose what I do is colouring in. Half of the time, I'm quite often painting on its own, but sometimes or frequently I'm doing a line drawing and colouring it in. So I'm doing my own colouring in lots of the time.
Yeah. So maybe we'll move on to that, the sort of process of the sort of step by step. And then I'd love to get you to talk about your materials, but if you've got a blank piece of paper, we'll come back to what the paper is. But talk us through the process that you do. And I mean, you do it you'd certainly do it every day, don't you, pretty much?
We definitely do it every day. I do it quite a lot of every day too. And
yeah.
It's like a job, But I think whatever drawing you're doing, you plan first.
Yeah.
So I think that either you do it in your head or you do it with a pencil very lightly, but you do have to design the thing. You have to work out where on the piece of paper everything is going to be. You have to plot it in. So I think that's the first thing. And then depending on whether you're painting straight with paint, I use watercolor, you then begin doing that. And at other times, I suppose you might start lightly in pencil, map it a bit further, and then draw in ink, and then let it drop. try and then color it in. But I think the process for me, I mean, I've kind of worked out over the 9,000 years I've been doing it, that the work is really working out what you're going to do next. It's doing the plan and the sketch.
Yes.
And doing the coloring in is the easy bit for me, because I'm quite assured with it. And so for me, the real challenge is working out what you're going to draw and where, and whether it's a flower, or much more complicated if you're actually drawing a scene, drawing the garden. I mean, gardens are hard to draw.
Yes.
Because we think, isn't that border lovely? It's got these lovely aquiledias, and then it's got a whole load of centaurea, and then it's got a whole load of anchusa coming up at the back of some mint. And you carefully, I was dreaming my way through one little bit of garden where I was picking this morning. But if you actually had to draw, it's just a whole load of boring green things, basically, with some tiny colored bits in.
Yeah.
So you also have to work out how you're going to express it so that, I mean, this is more complicated, I guess, but when you're drawing a garden, you have to basically find the things that matter to you and blow them up. You know, there's funny graphs people do where they say, you have a series of bubbles that say which word is more significant to you, which you use more, which idea. It's a bit like that growing a garden. You have to look at what is in fact just a great green compost heap growing, and then pull out of that the things that you're going to really feature. So there is an element of the iconographic, I think, in doing that. And of course, you also got the whole business of accuracy in drawing.
Yeah.
You know, you want drawing's a way of communicating. And if you're drawing to show other people, then it has to resonate for them. They have to say, yes, same, me too. I get that. I know they feel like that to me too. That's what makes these things powerful. And so there's an element of accuracy, of being able to actually communicate well. You need some kind of visual articulacy, as there's been. I'll try that, more articulacy. I think that you need some kind of visual articulacy in order to really transmit the idea that you're looking at to somebody else many miles away or many years away.
Okay, so talk us through perhaps next the ideal materials, because I know that is, brilliant take home for people, which is, which is the best paper, which is the best type of brush, and which are the best sort of paints.
Gosh, I mean, it's so difficult because it is each to his own and people have very different ideas. But I was brought up in a house where drawing was what happened. So I never used bad materials. I was always using good stuff because my parents were professional. And I would say, for starters, use the best thing you can.
Yeah.
You know, how much time are you actually, and most people are going to spend doing it? Why would you use a bad material?
Yeah.
You wouldn't buy rubbish food or drink rubbish wine. Well, not that much.
Yeah.
And, you've got to think the same. So, I mean, I paint in watercolor, and I do have the specific things. I love some German stuff called Schminke. It's a German friend told me yesterday, it means makeup in German, which I didn't know.
Oh, really?
And I use table brushes, and I use one size. I use a number 6, and I paint on Arches 600-gram hot press paper because I love it's like a sort of stained glass window. The light shines through from the white of the paper.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And if you gave me sort of very, very cheap watercolors and a nylon brush and some Bockingford bumpy paper, I could do it, but I'd find it hard.
Yeah.
I also had a real change 2 years ago. I was swimming in the ocean, the Indian Ocean. I got out and thought I'd pick up some shells in the sand. And I realized what I thought were going to be lots of lovely cowries were lots of toothbrush heads.
Oh, gosh.
And it gave me a real one-use plastic sort of horror moment.
Yes.
And I thought, well, I use a lot of fine liner felt pens.
Right.
I'm going to have to stop.
Yeah.
So I started using a pen and nib, dip pen. I use a bottle of ink and a pen. And it's been a real game changer for me. It is a bit harder, and it does make, I was doing some maths yesterday, and you have to be much more careful if you're using a pen than if you're using a felt pen.
Yes.
But it does also characterize the work quite a lot, and the kind of ease and smooth flow and the sort of generosity of ink in a pen is exciting, just like it is if you write in a fountain pen versus computer or a violet.
Yeah, definitely. And do you tend to do it mail order, or do you want to go to an art shop, or how do you tend to do it? I imagine you have tons of all these
Yeah, I mean, it
things.
would be a frightful fib to say I never did it mail order, but I find it really hard to shop for colours mail order. I love getting into Cornelissen or Green and Stone or wherever you are, Sennelier in Paris, all these brilliant shops. Japan is amazing for art shops. New York, all these things. You go in and you want to open the treasure trove drawers of their paint and say,
Yes,
well, what would it be like if I had that rather awful orange?
yes.
And sometimes you also think, oh, I'm going away to India. Should I go a little bit more lurid and tropical this time? Or I'm going to be sitting in the cold inside drawing stuff for the next week. I think there's a bit of that. But no, I think IRL is more fun. But sometimes I'm probably not for buying the paper because I know how to do it. And it's jolly annoying carrying huge, great big kilos of paper home. So nicer to let the Amazon fellow do take the strain on that one.
Yeah.
Actually,
maybe not Amazon. Yes.
No, there's someone called Jackson's who can't buy that paper from Amazon anyway. So the Jackson's art are very good. They're always sending the stuff out. Very useful boxes because then if you sell a painting, you've got the right size cardboard box.
Yeah, those narrow, register boxes. And then inspiration, Matthew. What inspiration in terms of other painters, and where would you recommend that people go for inspiration?
I think it is useful to look at other painters because you also see through their eyes. And there are watercolor painters that remain very important to me, and they're all quite obvious. There were Cotman and Crome and Girton, who are the sort of Norwich School painters, and then much more recently people like Edward Burrough and Patrick Proctor. And there was a very good Burrough exhibition at Cape Breton last year, and actually being amongst 50 of those huge watercolors, which are all 2 meters by 1, they're vast, made up of sheets joined together, and seeing how someone handles the actual paint, the materiality of painting. It's really exciting to look at that in real life. It's really nice. I went to the painter I love called Tunnicliffe, and his archive is in Anglesey, and I went to look at all the paintings in boxes of his, and handling the real things is the best of all.
Yes.
But definitely, I think that you want to look through the lens of other people's eyes.
Yeah.
Sounds like those terrible pig experiments one did in biology at school.
Yes.
But you kind of do need to see through them. But in inspiration terms, it can come from all over the place. It really, you can see an Indian miniature, or you can see Mexican painting on the side of a garage and think, my gosh, what an assured and incredible line that woman or man must have had to paint those tires on there. Or, what was the life of the person painting those perfect little birds in that border? And they're all ways. You keep your eyes open. That's the key, isn't it?
Keep your eyes open. Well, that's a good place to sort of begin to wind up. So Matthew's book is, as I said at the beginning, How to Look, Draw and Paint, just out. And it's worth also mentioning that Matthew does courses at his home in Oxfordshire, Bampton. And he, I hope, is going to come and do a course here at Perch Hill next spring. So that would be really fun. And he also, his garden, which is the most extraordinary garden, really, because it's brand new. I mean, he's made it in 5 years, and he's creating spaces that are brand new, and yet they feel like they've always been there. So that's also at Bampton, and you'll find on the website. Do you want to give the website, Matthew?
Yes, absolutely. It's just called Matthew Rice Watercolours, and there are several open gardens and lots of courses and all sorts of events that happen here. And you're very nice about the garden. It's the oddest and most peculiar thrown together garden, but it's quite joyful looking this weekend, definitely.
It's right up my street. It's full of abundant vegetables, flowers, cut flowers, but fragrance, lots of scent. It's very effusive and wonderful.
Before I go, just thinking about that, yes, at the moment, if you walk into the greenhouse, there's a very good moment where the cloud of sweet peas very gradually turns into the inside lilies. And there's a moment of utter horror where the two clash, and then you get into the lilies. And I love that walk through the greenhouse at the moment. It's a very satisfactory change.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matthew. Lovely to chat, and see you soon.
Very nice. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for listening to me, Sarah Raven, and Matthew Rice, who is an old friend and a brilliant gardener and a brilliant draftsman and illustrator. Next week, I'm going to be on my own, and I'm going to talk about how I divide the year into 2 sections of 6 months. And we're just coming out of one of them, so April to August and August to April, and which are the veg that I'm concentrating on sowing now as we move into that second section of the year, autumn, winter and early spring, and which are my 12 top veg.
You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.